lost all control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She caught me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Paranormal Portal Night Terrors. I am your host. Wait, let me try that again. I am your host, Brent Thomas. I don't know. I liked it. It kind of added a little extra level of fun to the show. But welcome, everybody. It is Sunday night. I hope you're having a great weekend, whatever you got up to. And I don't imagine it's probably much given the current state of things. But I hope you had a good day all the same and a wonderful time, whatever you did. I had a great day today. I've been just busy around the house and stuff. But I was also the guest today on Blue Line Bigfoot show, the Mountain Stream, and it was a lot of fun having a chance to kick back with Adam and Jake and talk with them and get into their show. And it was a lot of fun. It's kind of fun to be interviewed once in a while rather than doing all the interviewing. And I don't know. I hope it was a good show. I had a lot of fun doing it, and they're great guys. And if you didn't catch that earlier, you can sure catch that. I talk a lot about my own experiences there, and that was, if you go to YouTube, on YouTube, obviously where you are now watching this, but if you type in Blue Line Bigfoot, you'll find their channel, and it was today's show. It was a lot of fun. Once again, special thank you to Jake and Adam for having me on. They're going to be guests of ours right here on the one of our Wednesday shows, I think on the 6th, if I'm remembering correctly. And that's always a subject for debate whether I'm remembering correctly or not. But they should be on our show, and we'll talk to them and have a chance to reverse the roles here and do the interviewing, which will be fun. But anyway, it was a good time. And during the course of our show tonight, the call-in line will be open if you want to call in and be a part of the show. You're certainly welcome to do that. The number here on the portal is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. The number is right up there on the top of the screen, right under the words Paranormal Portal. It's in that little fine font there, but hopefully you'll see it. If you want to call in, I'd love to hear from you. Got a couple other shows coming up that are going to be fun. It looks like Farm and I have dialed in perhaps this Saturday night. I may not be doing the show on Friday night, ladies and gentlemen. Friday being my birthday. I'm not sure yet because I do love doing the shows and stuff, but I was just thinking, well, maybe I could just take a night off. Well, one a year sometime. But, it's not that I don't love doing the shows, but I was just thinking, well, I don't know. I'll see. Maybe I'll do somewhat of a show on Friday, but I don't know for sure yet. But I know we're going to do one Saturday, and of course Don will be with me on that one as well. But we will be welcoming our very own Carlton Farm from the chat room. He'll be on the show to talk about nutrition and spirituality and such. And I think that they both go hand in hand, because the body is certainly a big component of our spirituality. And so, it just makes sense that we should discuss that a little bit here and there too. And I can't think of a better guest to do it than our very own Carlton. So he'll be on the show on Saturday night, and we'll get into it. So definitely keep watching for that one. And, there's just always a lot going on here. But, if you're a listener of the podcast, just so you know, there won't be any new podcasts this week at all. And we're taking a little bit of a break, and we're kind of reorganizing things for the podcast. So, if you are a podcast listener, again, there's quite a bit of archives there. If you haven't caught all of the shows, definitely check those out. But there won't be any new podcasts this week. We just got a lot of things that we're trying to tie up and get sorted out with the podcast. So we're taking a step back from doing the episodes and just working on the mechanics and the backbone of it. So we'll keep you posted on that. But if you want to make sure you get all the updates for the Paranormal Portal, follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, or on Twitter. I'll make sure to post any updates and stuff there. And on Twitter, we are at Paranormal Portal, Portl. So Paranormal Portal, not Portal, Portal. So, all right, I guess that's all I got on the front end. So I hope you guys are ready, because it's time for bed. All right, so here we are. We are now officially underway. Thank you all so much for your wonderful patience. There's Farms in here as well. So, he's going to be on the show. He's gonna keep us all educated. He's gonna learn us good. I'm sure of it. Actually, just his last phone call on Friday night was brilliant, and he had some great input and information for us. So I'm really looking forward to having a couple hours to get into this and learn a hell of a lot more, because I am trying to be more healthy. I really am. I think it's important. I lived my life for the most part up to this point with a pretty solid disregard for my health. And as I'm aging, I'm still doing okay and everything for the most part. I could lose a few pounds, obviously, but I just thought, well, I'm trying to be more health conscious. And of course, there's a lot of information going on out there about that. And I can't think, I don't know where to turn sometimes for what is the right answer, what is the right regimen, what is the right approach, how do you use some of these things. And so it'll be a great opportunity to have someone that I consider to be incredibly knowledgeable on the subject, and hopefully he'll help me right my ways and make me a healthier person, as well as educating all of us on the intricacies of good nutrition and such. All right, so that'll be again on Saturday, but this is the Night Terrors, and these are our shorter format shows, roughly an hour, right there around, and where we generally talk about ghost stories and ghostly encounters. So I've got a bunch of them pulled up here. Well, I've got a couple pulled up right away, but I got a bunch more waiting in the chest of terror to open in case we need them, and I'm sure we will need them. So the first one tonight is kind of a long one. This one comes out of Pennsylvania, and it has to do with apparitions, voices, and touches. So we're going to get into this and find out what the hell's going on in Pennsylvania. Thank you for the lovely drink. All right, here we go. It seems that I've always been in touch with the spirits, the cold chill, the feeling of someone watching me, the feeling of someone being there are all too familiar. My mom had the gift. I should add that for her, it was a gift. For me, not so much. These feelings scare me. I'm not really eager to meet someone who isn't comfortable enough with their passing to leave. Well, that's kind of a good point. Their intentions scare me. The fact that I don't know how to communicate with them scares me as well. Who am I kidding? Even if I knew how to communicate with them, it would still scare me. When I was 6 years old, I had a dream. My mom dressed me in a small white sweater and a small black strap across the top shoes. The year would be 1966. The kitchen where we were preparing for outside was our real kitchen. The yard outside was not our real yard. Our yard was small, very small, surrounded by a wooden fence. The yard in my dream was a huge piece of land with giant trees everywhere. It was quiet. A bright sunny day with gentle breeze. I ran over to one of the trees, and beside the tree was a severed hand wearing a watch. Oddly, I wasn't afraid. I sat by the hand and just stared for a minute. Years later, I read in a dream book that my dream that would follow me throughout my life meant that no one would understand me. I didn't read the dream book until I was 25 years old. If I had read it sooner, I would have made me laugh more at people and situations in my life. I feel like I'm at a constant struggle to make people see things or feel things that I feel. There weren't any ghost hunter shows on television when I was young, or in fact, not many while I was growing up. You were considered crazy if you believed in that stuff. Whatever you do, don't hear voices. The devil was blamed for everything. Well, okay, he should be. The constant battle between good and evil in my years made it almost impossible to tell people that I believed in ghosts. Spirits. I believe in God. I believed in angels. I believe in Satan. Why was that okay? But not the fact that there were many maybe lost souls, lost spirits hanging around trying to communicate, trying to hitch a ride home if anyone hears them asking. When I was 12, I started telling people that I wanted to be a police officer. That was funnier then, knowing that spirits existed. There wasn't any girl police officers, only men were allowed to be police officers. In 1986, at 26 years old, I graduated from the police academy and started working on the streets in my own patrol car. My life was quite different from the little girl who wouldn't be understood, wearing her tiny little sweater sitting in the backyard by a tree with a severed hand. I grew up strong. I was very proud of my accomplishments. The against all odds life had come true for me. I thank God every day for the things he gives me and the people he puts into my life. I'm very fortunate and I know it. I'm blessed. Even in the worst of times, I know that I am fortunate and things will change. It's important that you understand my relationship with God because I believe that's what keeps the door open in my life for the spirits that aren't so welcomed. I was very close to my grandfather. When he died, it really broke my heart deeply. He really was my hero. My grandfather had stopped by to say hello a few times. He doesn't speak. He visits only last a second, but once he showed himself in the back of my car while I was driving. It scared me, but of course, as soon as I realized it was him, I cried and wished I had one more second to say I love you. My mother passed away when I was 39. There are no words for losing a parent. There is a hand that touches my shoulder on occasion. It startles me, but there are no words for losing a parent. It startles me every time, but I always say hello to her when it happens. These incidents I can deal with. The little boy that walks through my hallway and into the bathroom but doesn't come out ever, I can deal with. My kids always ask if he's in there before they go in. He's been around since they were his age. He's only about 5 or 6 years old, and they're 15 and 16 now. So he's been a guest for quite some time. The story that will forever bother me and is not so easily dealt with was back in 1987. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to share this because maybe I can finally make it go away. In 1987, I was a police officer for 1 year. I received a call to take a young girl to the hospital. She had the chicken pox, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me at the time, except that it wasn't long afterwards that I too had the chicken pox. And it turns out I never had the disease, and now at 27 years old, it got me. I had my niece living with me, and she was a baby, and I didn't want her to get them too, and I asked a friend if I could stay at her place, and she said sure. She wasn't there at night anyway because of her job and wouldn't be there for most of the day because of homework and school. Well, good for me. It would be like having my own place. I had the habit of staying up late and watching television while lying in bed. Her apartment was set up on one floor. The bathroom door was located in the bedroom. If you had to walk through her bedroom from the living room to get to the kitchen, and her bed was against the wall across from the bathroom, but not in the way of people walking through to the kitchen. If you lay on one side of the bed, you could watch television and see the bathroom door and the living room, and if you lay on the other side of the bed, you could see the kitchen. There was only one door into the apartment and the same door out. On my first night there, watching television, I heard a noise come from the bathroom, and there's no window in the bathroom, so I really had no concerns at the time, and when I heard the noise again, I checked, and nothing. About an hour later, I finally fell asleep, and I woke up to the blanket wrapped around my neck choking me. I couldn't move my body to take the blanket from my neck, and it felt like someone was lying on top of me, but there wasn't anyone there. My eyes were tearing and I felt numb. The only thing I could think of was to pray. I didn't have any breath, so my prayers were all thought in my mind, and it stopped. The weight wasn't there anymore, and the blanket wasn't tight. I coughed and ran for water in the kitchen. I got to my gun and walked through the apartment to see if anyone was there. The apartment was very small, so the 2-minute walk turned up nothing. The front door was locked, the windows were closed and locked, and I thought to myself how scary that was. I could have died. I sat there for a while and obviously couldn't sleep. The next day when I saw my friend, I told her what happened. Well, she didn't say anything, she just looked at me. It wasn't the response I was looking for, but I didn't want her to think I was crazy. She was taking nursing in school, and she was in her 3rd year of college, and I'd be the nut who got stuck in the blanket. I didn't talk about it anymore. I would be here for at least a week, and she was being very nice, lending out her place, and I didn't want her to think I was complaining. The next night I left the bathroom door open slightly, and the light on, and I had my gun closer too. I guess I was feeling that feeling. Something was there. As I was falling asleep, something breathed in my ear. Bah. It was close, like when someone whispers to you and you can feel the breath. I jumped from the bed and looked around almost frantically, but nothing. I could feel something all around me. I knew that my gun wasn't going to be helping me. The keys on the wall in the living room started to sway from side to side, and they were heavy on the long keychain. The kind of chain that goes around your neck, and they wouldn't be easily moved. I sat there deciding where I was going to go. It was 2 a.m, and I figured I would just stick it out for tonight and find a place in the morning to stay for the next few days. I admit I was angry and scared, but really angry. I started talking out loud. Why don't you come out when I'm standing here awake? Then I realized, and then what? Breathe, Dottie, just breathe. When my friend came home the next day, I told her I was going to look for a room at a hotel for a few days. I told her that something is going on around here and it was scaring me. She said, "It's him." I asked her who. She told me she is leaving this apartment as soon as she can because she never gets her studies done or any sleep. There's always a noise or something falling or keys moving back and forth. Wow, she really knew. She asked me if I would stay one more night because it was her night off and she didn't want to be alone. Well, I figured, yeah, okay, what can happen if we're both here? Well, that night I lay on the sofa bed and she went into her room. It was easier lying down with someone there. It was about 3 a.m. I woke up with someone on top of me. I couldn't move my body. He was heavy, and I felt him touching me like a real body would. But there was no one there, and my friend screamed. She was standing in the doorway between the living room and the bedroom. The pressure stopped from on top of me, and I sat up on the sofa. "Oh my God," I said. "Did you see him?" She just stared at me. She was scared to death. She couldn't talk. Then I saw him sitting at the kitchen table. He didn't care that the light was on. He was just sat there with his legs crossed and a grin on his face. He was dressed in a 1960s kind of look. Loafer shoes, black pants, a black turtleneck shirt, and a brown and gold striped sports jacket. He was a white guy in his late 30s, slicked black hair. The one thing I could never do well enough was draw, but I will remember his face forever. He had a long nose and dark eyes, pretty happy with himself for being a dead guy. I never moved closer to him. I stood there, frozen in my spot. He disappeared after a minute. The chair was moved out from the table where he sat. My friend never said what she saw that night. I don't think she ever went back to the apartment again. I did. I drove by a lot and even knocked one day when I noticed new people moved in. No one was home, and I don't know why I went back. I guess something just feels unfinished. I learned later that the houses in that area were built over a cemetery. The house across the street from the apartment was actually a church. The stained glass windows were still a part of the house on the second floor. He wasn't dressed old enough to be part of that. The cemetery was from the 1800s. Maybe I'll never know. Maybe it's better that way. The good spirits can stay, but I never want an encounter with a bad one again. Yikes. That's horrible. That is just horrible. I don't know how you deal with stuff like that. It's just such a I don't know, it's such a tragedy that these spirits like this will impose their will as if, well, I guess it's the same as if they're alive, right? We often say on the show, and it's something I think I originally heard from Jeffrey Seelman, and it made a lot of sense to me. And Jeffrey Seelman is an exorcist who was a guest on the show a few times, a great guy. And he said, these were human spirits. They were human beings, and just because they don't have a body doesn't change anything. They're still human beings, and if they were bad in life, they were going to be bad in the afterlife. And that's like, yeah, that makes sense. And I've used that line many times since then because, wisdom comes from all places. And, Jeffrey sure knows his stuff. He really does know his stuff. But it doesn't seem hard to figure out why that spirit never crossed over. Apparently is not a very nice guy. And again, I really do believe that some don't choose to cross because they don't want to be judged. They know they weren't a good person, and they don't want the judgment. They don't want to face that. And whether that exists or not, I don't know. I mean, I can't say. I'm currently alive. I'm not not an authority on the other side, but I know that all that matters is that people believe it exists. And if people believe it exists, then it will certainly affect their ability to cross over or their desire to cross over. Now, it is what it is, but I would definitely get somebody in there to clean that house, to purge, to exercise that house. The longer that a infestation, and I don't mean that it's necessarily demonic. I really don't think that is a demonic manifestation or infestation. I think that it's just a horrible spirit, just a dark, terrible soul. And it needs to be purged. It needs to be cleansed. And, whatever it takes. And it may take a priest. I mean, just because it's not demonic doesn't mean that it's easy. Spiritual attachments can be incredibly profound. And it can be hard to break them. And that's basically what a true cleansing is a purge. It's a breaking of those connections and forcing those things out. Now, again, I have to wonder, when they get forced out, they become someone else's problem. I would imagine. I don't think they're being banished to another realm or anything. They're just being banished from that space. So I would think, I don't know how I feel about that. I know that oftentimes people do cleanse, but to me, and I do it too, don't get me wrong. I cleanse too, but I think that in order to do something really effective, you would almost have to to bind that soul in a manner of speaking, whether it's, and you can decide what that means for yourself. I'm not going into details about those kind of things, but, it almost seems like you would need to secure that soul somehow so it doesn't become someone else's problem, because the next person may not be fortunate enough to get through it. And I don't know. I do believe that spirits can hurt people. I believe that this is a great example of that. Some people run around saying, ghosts can't hurt you. They can't hurt you. Well, they can, but normally they don't. I do believe you can protect yourself, though. I don't mean to imply that, if a nasty spirit decides to, that they can just have free reign. I think you can protect yourself. You can do things that will, keep you safe, give you a spiritual level of protection as well. But I think that sometimes these cleansings may be more like mopping with, mopping. How you kind of push dirt around with a mop? Sometimes it doesn't really pick it up, but you end up pushing it into a space whether it's just out the door or whatever, so that it's not on your floor. Well, then it's dirty somewhere else. And I think that there's got to be a more complete version of that. And I would love any opinions on that. If there are other things that people may wish to do, I think that prayer may help. And I think that calling for angels may help, or other spiritual beings, to take them away. Because I assume then that if somebody calls on, whether you believe in angels or not, if you believe that there's a divine presence and that there are divine beings that can help you, then when they take care of something, I believe they probably take it to where it needs to go. And it's no longer an option. So I think that must be probably the right path. And this is me thinking as I'm talking. I don't plan out any of these discussions, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just thinking as I'm going. But I think that, asking for a divine being to take something away would be much better than just cleansing. I think you cleanse anyway because you want to knock down the energy that they may have built up in the space, or may have built up in the space, whether from the entity or from other, just from the living. You always want to knock down the energy and flatline that. But I think that, if you are pushing something out, ask that something receives it and takes it away, so it just doesn't go outside your door and then wander somewhere else to someone else that gets the problem. So I think it's many tiered approach is probably the best way. But I hope that makes sense. I don't know. I don't know if I always make sense or not, but that's my sense, my 2 cents. All right, this one's coming from North Carolina. When I was a little girl back in the early 1980s, I lived in a town where one could ride their bicycle all over the place and no one would bother you. The whole town actually watched over kids when they played outside. Well, I lived on a street where the part of it cut off into a dirt road. And there were old houses down it and a horse farm. I used to ride my bike up and down the dirt road every day after school. And there was one particular house that I really liked. It had sat abandoned for years, and I would stop in the road and push my bicycle down in the field across from the house. And I used to like to sit at the edge of the field and stare at that little house. One spring day, I rode my bike to this house and did what I always did, except I didn't push my bike into the field this time. I sat astride on it and looked at the house, and I felt kind of dizzy and shook my head. And when I did, this old black car came driving up and parked in the driveway. I thought it was kind of funny, but I thought maybe someone had finally bought the house and was moving in. The house didn't look the same, however. It looked as though it had just recently a brand new paint job, and there were actually flowers growing where there had once been weeds. A lady and her baby appeared on the porch from nowhere, and they seemed to be welcoming the person in the car. The door opened, and a man got out and was waving back at them, and both people were wearing old-fashioned clothes like from the 40s or 50s. I knew something wasn't right about it, what I was seeing, but I just kept watching. I got really dizzy again and lost my balance and fell off my bike. And I looked at the house to see if these people saw me fall, but they were gone. The car was gone. The house looked dilapidated and the flowers were gone. I couldn't understand what had just happened. I got on my bike and pedaled as fast as I could back home, and I never told a soul about what I had just seen until years later. I always wondered if I stepped into some kind of dimensional thing or entered into a time slip. Has anyone had any kind of experience like that? That is really cool. It does sound like a time slip. It sounds, and not necessarily the person maybe didn't physically go through it, but they could have been mentally pulled into it so that they experienced this, and that would be kind of maybe the dizziness, obviously. But, I think those things happen. They don't always have to be physical. Like you're not actually going through a portal, but I think those energy rifts that appear and disappear around could pull you mentally into that time, and you could watch for whatever period of time you're allowed or able to see a window into another time, another world. And that's incredibly powerful. And that's the thing. I think that reality is that dynamic. Now, I do wonder though, when people are talking about time slips and meaning time traveling, like they're seeing a glimpse of a time long gone or whatever. And I wonder if it isn't actually, if it isn't very often or maybe at all, maybe it's never really truly a physical thing. Maybe it's always a mental projection. Maybe that's what people are experiencing. But it's it's very real. Don't get me wrong. I think it's very real. But perhaps people are only like reliving that memory of an energy from a different time. Or if you look into some of the fantastic ideas surrounding time, there's many schools of thought that says that time is just all times are happening in one moment, and I believe it's called non-Euclidean space-time. And the idea is that every moment from the dawn of our galaxy, the Big Bang or whatever the initial event was, up until its eventual collapse again, is all happening in this infinite now. And that now is not a measure of time as we understand it, but it is our awareness that moves through this perhaps vibration. I don't know. And people perceive that as time. So in other words, in this very instant, you are being born. You have graduated high school. You have, met the love of your life, or lost the love of your life, or, married and divorced and had kids and we're going through all your events, but in this one now. And so when you think about that possibility, that is maybe more of an accurate idea of what the structure of this is, then these space-time, these time slips kind of make sense, because at that point then it's not really traversing any true space or true time. It's just a matter of shifting an awareness. And if that is a sensitivity to a different, again, I'm going to use the term because it just is so universal, but a different vibration or a different frequency that time existed in, that moment was being displayed in a certain vibrational frequency. And for some reason, people can inadvertently slip into those different vibrations and then back out. Now, this person was talking about feeling dizzy. And I imagine that could be a very physical reaction to shifting that awareness or that focus, that it would probably have feelings of being dizzy or disoriented because, everything just changed. But I don't know. It's hard to know for sure. Again, it's all just a lot of ideas here on the portal, but I think these are really amazing ideas to explore because, again, this is the breadcrumbs. This is the clues as to, the true nature of our reality. I think very much so. But, again, it's not my place to preach what people should believe or not, but I just think there's something really powerful to that. So I'm opening up some more stories. And, if anybody has any more thoughts about that, I'd sure love to hear them because, the more people that discuss it, the more we can share our ideas and compare notes and maybe refine our ideas about it through our discussion. But I think that's something very possible. All right, the next story we're going to get into is from North Carolina. North Carolina. Just checking. How we doing? We're doing good? Okay. And this has to do with a haunted place. Let's see, how long is this? It's a pretty good-sized story. Not horribly long, but it's a longer one. Excuse me. When I was married to my now ex-husband, we wanted to buy a house. We had 2 small children and needed the room, and we found a double wide that was only a few years old and in really pristine shape. I wasn't too keen on it, but my ex really loved it. And when I stepped inside the house, the atmosphere in it was so thick you could cut it with a knife. From previous experiences, I knew this was an omen. I told him there was something wrong with this house and that we should move on and look for something else, but as usual, he never did listen to me. We moved in and things seemed quiet for a while. I went to work and my stepdad came to watch the kids in the mornings, and the second week of watching the kids, he started getting anxious to leave as soon as my ex or me came home from work. I noticed this and told him we needed to talk. I asked him why he was nearly running out the door, and he told me that every morning at around 9 a.m., he heard the back door open and he heard footsteps walking through the den, through the kitchen, and stopped in the living room where he was. He also told me that he heard voices throughout the house when there shouldn't be any, other than his or my children's. I don't know what to say, and he confirmed my suspicions that something was not right here. And I didn't want to lose him as a sitter. I told him I would talk to my husband and come up with a plan. Well, the following weekend, things turned for the worse. My car broke down right down the road from where the house was. My husband was behind the wheel, and when he said it just stopped driving. It was around midnight, and we lived on a country road right above where the car stalled, and there was an old AME. What the hell's AME? AME church that had been abandoned for years. I'm trying to think of what AME could stand for. I'm sorry, I don't got anything. He said that he got out of the car and had the feeling as if someone were right behind him. He started running, and it was running after him. He nearly broke down the door, sobbing and shaking, and wouldn't speak of what he saw for a few hours. That Sunday night, we went into work the third shift, and I was alone in the house with the kids. He went into work the third shift. I was home alone with the kids, and my son, who was 4 at the time, kept telling me about this thing he saw in his room at night. He said it was dressed in a black suit and made him feel scared. So I assured him that there was no one in the house but us, and tucked him and my 2-year-old in their beds and went to bed myself. Around 1 a.m., I heard a noise coming out of the boys' room. I thought one of them got out of bed and was coming to get in mine. This mildly irritated me because I knew I would get kicked and pummeled all night. I lay in the bed with my back turned to the door. I heard little footsteps walking through the living room, and I heard my door open just a little bit. With my eyes closed and my back turned to the door, I said, "Come on, Nick, get in the bed with Mama." I waited, but no kid. I turned to look, and there was no child in my room. I looked all over for them, and I finally went to their room where they were both sound asleep. It struck me as kind of odd, but I brushed it off. Things were quiet for months after that, and I noticed my husband. I started getting into nasty fights, almost nightly. He started drinking more and started becoming abusive towards me. We had never had an argument in our whole relationship until we moved into that house. There was one night after a particularly nasty fight that the kids told me something strange. After my husband stormed out of the door and went to work, I went in and made sure the kids were all right. Thankfully, they were asleep. I went to bed upset and was ready to leave with my children and go stay with my mom until the whole thing blew over. And I fell asleep and didn't wake up until the next morning. And when I woke up, both kids were in my bed crying hysterically. I calmed them down and asked them what was wrong. My oldest son said that he and his brother woke up really scared and wanted to come get in bed with me. And they saw the man wearing black standing by the front door. And every time they tried to get into my room, it would come over there and threaten to hurt them and me. My son said he was short and squatty like an old frog. And they made a run for my room and hopped on the bed, trying like crazy to wake me up. They couldn't wake me up and thought I was dead. When I finally woke up, they started crying. They knew Mama was okay and they could go to sleep. That night, things got more out of control. My ex was unbelievably drunk, and we had a physical fight in front of the kids. He pushed me down and tried to strangle me. I could see in his eyes that my husband was no longer there, that something else was. I fought for my life and managed to call the cops. The kids and I got out of that house for good. When I went to get our things, my ex had taken nearly everything that belonged to the kids and me. I got whatever was left. When I was in that house, I felt more scared than I ever did my whole life at that time. Something chased me out of that house, and I never came back. My oldest son is 11 years old and still cries to this day when you mention the White House or the Frogman. I will always believe that it was the land and not the house that was haunted. Yeah, that's horrible. Now that's some kind of grotesque thing. So I don't know what that would be, a froggish kind of man, but many times, well, I mean, demonic figures have often been portrayed as being some kind of amalgamation of a person and beasts, just some kind of blending. And I don't know if that's, accurate for a demon or not. I mean, I just don't know, and I don't care to know, really. But when you hear descriptions like that, and especially the method. Now, here's the thing with demonic presences, I don't think that they make themselves widely known, and I don't think they want to be known. For what I think demons are all about is that they are a perversion of life. They are a perversion of all that is good, and their sole driving force is to tear down everything that is love and good and wonderful, and it's for some reason, and I don't know, I don't understand that. Perhaps that's just of course there's the religious ideas for what is a demon and how did they come to be. And that's just as valid as any other. I mean, I'm not saying that it is or isn't that, but I don't think that they want to be known. I don't think that a lot of times people will say they dealt with a demon, and I've been saying that for a long time on the show, that I think that there's a lot of investigators that like to throw that around really cheaply because it sounds impressive. It's like, well, you weren't just dealing with a ghost, you were dealing with a demon. Now that's street cred right there in paranormal circles. Now, whether they were or not, I don't know. I mean, I can't be sure, but I suspect not nearly as often. There, I'm sure, are a few true stories out there of that. But I think a demon wants to corrupt everything. They want to corrupt it and tear it apart. And they can't do that if people are widely aware that they're dealing with a demon. They can't do that because people will resist. They will fight against it. A demon doesn't want you to know it's there. A demon is there subtly, and it's subtly turning you and changing you, and it's creating the whole oppression thing. And oppression is just like, if you've ever heard people describe like real chronic depression, that sounds very similar to what I think a demonic oppression would be. It's that whole cloud, that darkness that just envelops you. And you can stand in the sunlight and not feel the warmth. It's just like there's some kind of oily barrier between you and everything good. And it's an isolation, is what it is. And so a demon will try to corrupt you through weakening you. It will try to make you surrender. And it does that as subversively as it can. Because the minute people become aware of it, of course, you call the priest, you call religious figures, you try to get exorcisms, whether it's a property exorcism or a personal exorcism or whatever. Once people know that they're dealing with something like that, then they mobilize and they get help. But That's not what a demon wants. And if you look at, there's from my experience, the thing to watch out for the most in a demonic situation is look for changes, sincere changes in character, because that will be the demonstration of them being under some kind of oppression, being angry, like happy people that are just suddenly angry and jaded. If it's not drugs, it could very well be something much darker and spiritual, and it's horrible. So those kind of things are absolutely terrifying. And so this could be it. This could be a story of an actual demonic presence there. It didn't look like it was ever, it may have been working on the husband. And when the car broke down, he felt like he was being chased by something, and was in tears and wouldn't talk. Well, maybe it caught him. Maybe it started its attachment then, because fear, of course, is a surrender. And granted, I'm talking real large here about don't be afraid, but obviously those are incredibly emotionally charged events, and it's nobody's failed if they feel afraid in a situation like that. But it's just important to resist fear, because once you fear, you're really kind of surrendering. So just my ideas again, but that does sound like it could be an actual demonic situation. I hope they made it out okay. I hope the ex-husband, was able to come out of that or get help. But that's a terrifying story. That really is. Especially, with the kids. Oh my God. And that was a question today on the interview when I was on the Blue Line show. It was like, what is the most profound story, or the most, oh my God kind of story you've done on the show? And all I could think was, I couldn't think of any one story, but any of the stories that deal with children, like this one, to me are just oh my God, it just hurts. It just makes me feel so sad and so horrible for those little children having to deal with something like that. It's just not right. It shouldn't happen. So let's continue on. And the next one is coming from Minnesota. God, it's almost 10 till already. How did we get here? It happened so fast. God bless it. All right, let's go. This one's from Minnesota. It has to do with haunted places. Oh, I know this town. It says, when I lived in Richfield, I had lived in a house that was really old, built maybe in 1970, and there had been no deaths or anything else that I'm aware of. My room was in the basement, so I had my own little living room and my own bedroom. And every morning when I would get up to shower, the house would be dead silence. When I would return to my room, I could hear humming coming from the vents. Yeah, that's weird, but I'd hear it every morning, and this ghost would hum a tune, and I would in turn hum the same tune back. And the ghost, who was female, would hum it back to me. So I decided to hum a different tune, and she hummed it right back. Well, that's kind of cool. The ghost, she didn't talk or anything, but she sounded young, maybe in her 20s, not sure, but the humming was been going on for a while. I feel like she was not a threat, so I was really okay with her. During the nighttime while I slept, I could not hear the humming. The female ghost only hummed in the mornings, but instead, I could hear a little boy and drums. And it was as if the boy was playing a drum set and just laughing away. Now, the boy and the drums only occurred at night. I hear lots of talking and walking, but could not see any of the ghosts. It was like they didn't want to be seen. And what is strange is how this girl just hummed in the mornings and the little boy played drums at night. And then a whole bunch of them talking at night. Now this woman follows me to campus where I go to school, and I've been here for a year, and this just started happening a week ago. I don't understand, so anyone who knows anything and can help would be great. Thanks. Now that's definitely, the little boy drumming and the people talking could be residual, but the humming was definitely intelligent. That was it was him humming her tune back to her, and she would repeat it back to him. And then one time he said he hummed a different tune, and she mimicked that. So that's an intelligence response. So there is at least one active spirit there, it sounds like, just based upon that. But the boy drumming and laughing, I don't know, that could be just a residual thing, something that's just being replayed. And the people talking, if he's not hearing anything specifically that seems to, interact or refer to their situation now, then it could very well be residual as well. And you can find both in locations. It's not like it either has to be one or the other. Some events may be residual, but there can still be an intelligent haunt in that house, an intelligent spirit in that house or location. But it can be both. That's pretty cool, though. I like that. I think that's really neat that he was able to hum and get responses. So, because that is a fundamental form of communication, right? If you make a noise and something makes the noise back, and you make a different noise and it makes that noise back, then that's a comprehension. That's a connection of sorts. But I don't know how this person knows that she's following him to school now. I think that's interesting, but they never pointed out how that was perceived. So I don't know what to make of that, but can they? Sure. Because a spirit it doesn't necessarily have to attach to a place. They can attach to a person. And I believe that spirits can be unattached too. I think that there are spirits that wander, or maybe they're different kind of spirits that wander. I don't know. But very wild. Cool story. All right. This one is very long, very, very long. So this one I can't read tonight because we just don't have enough time. This is about a 20-minute story by itself. This one, I don't know what the hell this is. Okay, this is more of a research one, so I don't have to read that one. I'm just looking for another one that I can read prior to the end of the show here, and I think this is it, and this is coming from California. And it says, this story took place about 4 or 5 years ago, and to this day, I still cannot look at the windows in my mom's apartment at night. My mom lives down in Seaside, California, and it's just about an 8-hour drive from where I currently live. I usually go and visit her sometime during my time off from school. Well, this time I decided to take my older stepsister with me. We arrived in Seaside at about 8 p.m. We greeted my mom and got comfortable on the couch with something to eat. The living room of her apartment is pretty small. It's set up so that the couch is against the wall, and across from the wall is the television and a rather large window. My stepsister and I were happily watching television when suddenly I saw this girl, or a young woman, I guess you could say, float across the window and into the television. It was probably from about the end of her neck up to the top of her head, and she had long, wavy, and what looked like would have been blonde hair and fair skin. She wasn't wearing any sort of expression on her face, and she looked pretty tranquil as she drifted across the window. At this point in time, my heart was in my throat, and I convinced myself not to say anything to my stepsister, and in doing so, I would forget all about it. But before I could think another word on it, my stepsister blurted out, "Bailey, I just saw a ghost, a girl ghost." And I said I'd seen the same thing. It was reassuring to know that I wasn't the only one who had seen it, but it was also really frightening to know that there was a ghost in my mom's apartment. I'm positive that this wasn't someone walking by the window because my mom lives on the second story. Unless someone was inside the house with a projector, it wasn't a hologram. I have not seen this girl's head again or any other ghostly experiences since that time. Wow, that's really cool. Again, looked peaceful, she said, so hopefully it is peaceful. I don't know. And hopefully you guys are all peaceful now as well. I hope the portal has brought you peace. At least that's my aim every night. I hope it worked. But that's going to wrap up our journey through the portal tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will be back tomorrow night. So I hope you will join me then, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 days a week right here on YouTube, especially during all this social distancing stuff. We'll be doing the portals regularly. But again, if you're a listener of the podcast, please know that we're going to be not releasing any podcasts this week. So we're going to go on just a break after a year straight of doing 10 shows a week. We're going to call it give ourselves a little hiatus. So, and remember, please check out Facebook for any updates about the show, whether the YouTube shows. Of course, the announcements always go through there, as well as the podcast. So just stay tuned, and we'll keep you updated as much as we can. And I guess that's going to wrap it up for me. Love you all. Hey, Scottish Wildman, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you, Digger Dog. It's great to see all you guys in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure. I hope you guys have enjoyed the shows lately. So go back and watch YouTube stuff you haven't seen from the Paranormal Portal. Yeah, exactly. There is that. I mean, we've got over 650 episodes in our archive on YouTube. And as you go back in time, please bear in mind, the show has always been kind of metamorphosizing. So some of the older episodes, they may take a little longer to actually get to the good stuff, but just hang in there. It was a learning experience for Don and I for a long time. And I hope, I hope what you're watching today is at least more refined than it was then, but just understand. I still get comments on those old videos like they were just recorded. Oh man, I can't believe you took 15 minutes to get to any actual stories. It's like, oh, sorry to waste your time. But they are old episodes. Remember that. Those are some of the, way back to the first episodes we ever did. So bear that in mind as you watch those, that it was a journey of developing what the portal is, and we're still developing what the portal is. So, we don't always have it all figured out, but I hope as you watch the older episodes, you bear that in mind, because, they're there for the integrity's sake, showing the evolution of the Paranormal Portal. So that's going to wrap it up for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much again for being here. I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. And I'll be back tomorrow night with more of the Night Terrors, so I hope you'll join me. Good night, everybody. Oh, and sweet dreams.